debates via coin toss. And go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Well, my name is Luke Kula, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a junior studying political science. My minors are economics and Spanish. I'd like to thank the DePaul for this opportunity, first and foremost, to have this conversation in front of the student body, that's accessible, because I think that, transparency and allowing, students to, see what the positions of the candidates are that they're voting for. But moving right along, the four primary things or initiatives that I'd like to pursue if elected as president go under supporting students, creating a common campus environment, Vincentian values, and creating a safe campus. In terms of supporting students, not only supporting students financially, but also physically, emotionally, and environmentally. All because we understand, my running mate Michelle Ann and I understand that support for students comes in a variety of facets. In terms of creating a common campus environment, we would like to make sure that all students, no matter their background or whatever their circumstances are, have an equal opportunity to succeed. In terms of creating a safe campus, we believe that physical safety on campus should also be at the forefront of what SGA does, and that the fight against sexual assault needs to be a critical part of our administration or at any point of what SGA does. And finally, we want to make sure that Vincentian values, that question of what must be done, always remains at the tenet and center of what SGA is as an institution.
Hi, hello all the viewers out there. My name is Vanessa. I'm a junior studying political science, and I'm running for president alongside my dear friend Rick Pop for vice president. So a couple of things that we highlight whenever we visit student organizations and we talk to students are three things: educational affordability, inclusivity and opportunity, and SGA is an advocate for students, but also in Chicago and Illinois. So to break that down a little bit, educational affordability is extremely important. Tuition is rising, and we need to sustain grants and scholarships that pertain to our students. So for instance, the MAP grant. 1 in 5 students at DePaul receive this grant. So we need to continue our efforts, but also broaden our efforts toward Pell Grants and other scholarship opportunities and resources and make those accessible to students. Inclusivity and opportunity. Engage more students on campus, whether it's promoting their events, visiting their student organizations, talking to them and sitting one-on-one with them. We are better to engage with our students if we have that physical conversation and dialogue with them. And then lastly, SGA is an advocate for students, but also in Chicago and Illinois. So partnering up with Chicago colleges and universities to make sure that we're all solving these issues on our campuses together, creating those solid messages, for instance, for MAP grants, going down to state legislators and government officials, and then having that solid message so they know it's not just a DePaul thing, it's a statewide thing. It applies to all students. And that can umbrella term to sexual assault prevention, bystander intervention, textbook affordability, and financial aid.
All right, great, thank you. And now delving a little deeper into your initiatives, Luke, what would you say is most important to your platform, and how can you make that happen if you are elected president?
Well, personally, I know my running mate Michelle Ann and I, we've discussed a lot of these things. We think they're all equally important, but probably the first and foremost thing, in my view, is supporting students. And we understand that financial success or financial support is probably the most important. But again, we'd like to emphasize that we believe that there are a lot of other things that go into making a college student's career successful. That's why we want to support students, physically, making sure that they have the physical spaces needed, to do whatever study they want to do, to have fun, because relaxation is important as well. And the spaces that they need to just have a successful college career. But most importantly, like financially specifically, one of the things we'd like to do if elected is create a scholarship specifically for long distance, low income commuter students, so they can apply and, get a free $200 Metro Pass. It's not a lot, but for a lot of low income students, we think that a $200 pass per year, could go a long way towards, making sure that they can save DePaul.
Okay, great. And Vanessa, same question.
So one of the things that we usually stress is affinity, because that doesn't just mean my school spirit. That means, what does your DePaul diploma mean when you graduate from here? That means, how do you connect with other people outside of these DePaul walls? How are you interacting with students, administration, faculty and staff, and the greater Chicago community, and even worldwide? I think that that's one of the important things. It's an umbrella term that can apply to anything. And I think the way to start that is having conversations, sitting down and getting that interconnectedness, talking to students and talking to pretty much anybody is extremely important in forming those relationships and building that trust, and then finding those common goals that we can work together and accomplish together.
Okay, so basically now we're gonna ask each of you an individual question. So my question is for Vanessa. Many of your initiatives, kind of the ones you're just talking about too, mirror the current SGA's leadership initiatives, such as educational affordability. So how will you set yourself and your administration apart from what we already have?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I would say it's from my involvement with other student organizations on campus and seeing that the initiatives that we currently have, and we realize that there are more, align with a lot of students' needs. So being an orientation leader and talking to those first-year students, how can we improve their experience and their first initial contact here at DePaul? Being part of a Delta Gamma fraternity on campus. How can we promote each other's events, but not just in our specific community, but in others? I think a lot of it means looking at different ways we can approach these initiatives, because just by saying these initiatives doesn't mean it's going to repeat what has happened in the past, but look for innovative ways to make it more effective and more helpful for students in the future.
Thank you.
All right, Luke, so one of your initiatives, and you said this in your opening statement too, also on your questionnaire, is campus safety, and you specifically highlighted sexual assault, kind of saying that it's at the forefront of SGA's mission. So why sexual assault, and what can SGA do to combat it? What are some initiatives that can be done on the student government level?
Well, Brendan, one of the things that that always comes to my mind is that statistic that's always revolved around 1 out of 5 women in college get sexually assaulted before in their 4 years, and that's a serious thing to consider. That's when you hear a statistic like that, that's got to become at the forefront of any student government, because we know it's a nationwide problem. But more specifically, what I know what my running mate and myself would like to do if elected is push for more common ways of students to gain voice with the administration and how to solve these different things. I can't necessarily speak for a lot of the population of DePaul University, as given my certain demographic background, but I would like to open up opportunities for other students, to give their input. One thing that we would specifically like to do is create a student advisory board for public safety. So students, that generally don't feel that they have a voice with public safety can directly access, talk to them and discuss, and give ideas of improvement.
Okay. Now we'll be moving on to some of our campus issues section of our questions, and you will have a minute on each of these responses as well.
Yep. We've been following kind of the increase of adjunct professors, and so we were wondering if each of you had a position on adjunct professors, and why or why not, just kind of an open question.
So through my experiences with adjunct professors and also conversing with other students, whether they're my friends or not, adjunct professors provide a really great holistic learning experience for students here at DePaul. Not only do they know the topics and the themes that are going on in the course, specific to the topic that the students are going over in the course, but they have that real world experience that they can apply into the classroom. I think that real world experience helps students when they're transitioning this content, and how can I apply this when I graduate? How can I apply this in my internship? How can I apply this in my daily lives? So I've noticed with my own experiences and with talking with my friends and other students, adjunct professors are extremely important to their education. The realness and the willingness to help, because they are, both in that educational and working environment. They know what students are experiencing, and they know how to help students get to where they need to be.
Well, I think that personally, I don't want to speak too much on adjunct professors, because my experience, I haven't had a lot of, classes that have been taught by adjunct professors. But from my knowledge of adjunct professors, they provide, a very interesting, different, experience than, what would have a typical professor, just because from their, backgrounds in the nature of being an adjunct and not being, a permanent part of DePaul, that they can offer that, difference in background, because often they come from varying backgrounds or different institutions where, they've had those different experiences, and they can come and, share them with DePaul students. Granted, they don't offer perhaps the same amount of expertise that, longer term or, more permanent professors can offer, but I think that, it's good to have a balance between, the two, between, permanent, more tenured professors and then adjunct faculty.
Okay. In your opinion, what obligation does SGA have to support referendums that get included on the SGA ballot and pass? Luke?
Well, given I am a firm believer in the democratic process and the rule of law, and as our Constitution states that any referendum that is passed by a majority of students voting upon it, it is SGA's duty to uphold it. So I personally believe that, whichever way a referenda goes, it speaks for the student body, and that, as president, it is my duty to uphold it, whichever way it goes.
I think that it's very important to help students who are pushing towards a referendum. We are your advocates, and we're here as a resource and a liaison to you. So I think being that resource to students, whether a referendum passes or doesn't pass, I think just because a referendum doesn't pass and it doesn't get on that ballot, it's still important to continue those conversations and move forward. Whether it's sexual assault prevention, whether it's providing contraception, or whether it's any issues that are going on campus. I think that by engaging in those conversations and continuing them, not only with those students, but bringing them to administration, faculty, and staff is extremely important because clearly students care about those problems and matters.
I have a question about conflict of interest, so Vanessa, you can go first, then followed by Luke. What other leadership positions do you hold on campus, and how will you separate those duties from the duty of representing students as a whole at DePaul?
So would you like me to list my experiences and
just anything else you'll be involved with while also holding the presidency if elected?
Yeah, I think they actually work hand in hand because I think it provides for conversations to exist and sustain throughout the entire school year with students. So whether it's being part of Demon-thon, being part of Relay for Life, or my sorority or student government, I think it's very important to reach out to not only those that I'm a part of, but outside of that as well, because it's very difficult to engage with with the entire student body, and by being part of student organizations, I think that that's one step in order to have a better understanding of the questions and the concerns that exist within our student body.
Okay.
Well, primarily, my current method of involvement at DePaul, other than SGA, is I'm president of DePaul Congressional Debate, and if I've made plans that if elected, that most likely I'm not going to be participating in, because I want to make sure that all of my faculties go into advocating for the student body interests if elected as president of SGA. Just personally, I really want to put all my passion and as much, of my time and effort and energy into this position as possible. So that's pretty much next year of, just SGA president all the way.
Thank you. Okay, great. Now we'll be moving on to some questions about transparency, and for each of these, you'll have 30 seconds to answer.
All right. So this will be a yes, no, and then you can explain your answer. So what is your stance on secret ballots? I know that's a concern that many students have, that their elected officials hold votes without the knowledge of who votes which way. If either of you are elected, will secret ballots still be held next year? And start with Luke.
If elected, I will do as much as I can to make sure that secret ballots are abolished in every capacity necessary. I personally believe that it's vital for student representation and for students to understand how the representatives are voting and holding them accountable. So that they really know when they place a vote for that person, that they are truly advocating for their interests. I think that that's just a critical core part of the democratic process.
As I mentioned before, collaboration and inclusivity is extremely important to me and also my running mate. So I think it's very difficult to make a decision on that right now, knowing that we don't know who's elected in those positions. So my idea in the fall, and hopefully in the upcoming school year in general, is to be able to bring those students into conversation, whether you're a senator, whether you're a cabinet member, to have that dialogue with us so we can create that healthy and productive conversation, both in the SGA meetings, but also outside of the SGA meetings.
Just what's your stance on publishing the minutes of the meetings themselves, just in terms of how long your conversation is spent, where, that sort of thing? That's not really in place now. If you were elected, would you change that at all, or change the process of?
Yeah, I think there's many ways we can increase transparency. We've made great strides this past year, but one way is to reform our website. We currently have in the works announcements. I think those can help students be more engaged with the student body. And I think that by having those announcements and showing them what we're discussing in regards to SGA would invite them to come to our meetings and be more involved with the conversations that we're having.
Well, specifically relating to your question on minutes, if elected, I would push as hard as I can to make sure that minutes of every single SGA meeting are published as soon as possible after the meeting. And taking a step further in transparency, I'd like to point out that if elected, my running mate and I would like to as efficiently as possible, publish whenever there is an SGA vacancy of a seat, so that students understand and know when these vacancies and these seats are open, so that as quickly as possible, there's a democratic process and that students can inquire and, find out, what open seats there are that they can fill.
Okay, great. Now we'll be moving on to, we had students submit questions. We opened it up to the student body. So our first question comes from Michael Boswell. How do you view the university administration? Would they be your partner, your superior, your adversary? What sort of relationship do you envision having with senior administrators?
I believe adversarial is definitely in no way a word I would describe the administration. If anything, they would be partners and allies, because the administration works, I firmly believe, as hard as we do in advocating for student interests. They want to see, the best of students. I don't think that at any certain point that, Father Holtschneider would ever, think poorly of students or ever not want to advocate in their interests. So I would work, if elected, as hard as I can with the administration, to work with them to improve the lives of students.
From my past experiences working with administration, not only in SGA, but outside of SGA, they have shown great interest and they really do care about the students. So I do think of them as an ally and actually friends to the student body. I think that it's very important in this role as SGA representatives to relay the concerns, because oftentimes maybe they're not the ones talking to the students. So it's really important to sustain those relationships, even if sometimes we don't meet eye to eye. It's important to bring those topics that perhaps they don't really understand from the student perspective and bring it to their attention.
This next student question comes from Kennedy Carlson. DePaul University is named after St. Vincent de Paul and as an institution follows the Vincentian tradition. What does being Vincentian mean to you? And if elected, how will you utilize the Vincentian tradition during your presidency? So Vanessa.
So I actually had the opportunity of going on the Vincentian Heritage Tour and taking the course on Life and Times of St. Vincent de Paul. And one thing that I really do stress with that is encouraging others to help their neighbors, whether their neighbor is a stranger. It's not always just helping out your friends or people that you know, but it's encouraging others around you to challenge themselves and ask them what is their role in society? What is their role here at DePaul? And how do they see their role changing when they graduate? And I think that one thing that I would love to implement in the future is making sure that all students are aware of the Vincentian mission and the importance of the values that our university is founded on. I think it's very easy to go 4 years here or work for such a long period of time and not really understand the true importance of Vincent de Paul and Louise de Marillac and the Daughters of Charity and all the history and rich history behind that.
To me, the Vincentian mission is all about the truth. Taking that step and going out and seeking and finding out what a reality of the situation is. And, taking a step more than that, it's about seeing that, certain people don't have the advantages that you have. And that, the Vincentian mission to me is going out and ensuring that every single person that you encounter, every person that, comes to DePaul, for example, has that equality of opportunities to succeed. Because, I think a big thing about this university is that we pride ourselves on bringing in, first generation students or low income students and, providing them the opportunities to get a firm, world-class education. And, I think that, as SGA president, that's something I really would like to enforce and push for.
Great. Our next question comes from Rajane Redmond, who is the president of Strong, which is an organization on campus that advocates for creating community for women of color on campus. So her question is, what will you do to make student culture at DePaul more inclusive for students of color? This does not mean carving out groups or organizations for minorities to establish communities, but an integration of students of color with the majority. How will you make DePaul comfortable? And that can go to Luke.
Well, first of all, I will speak to say that I am not a woman of color. So I would not, obviously, so I would not like to speak on behalf of any woman of color. I would rather, like to make efforts to, create dialogue with women of color. How do they feel that they would like to be more, included on campus? It'd probably be a question better suited for, the Vincentian United candidate, Kara Anderson, who's running for, Executive Vice President of Student Affairs. Perhaps she can answer more to that specific question, in her debate tomorrow. But personally, I don't like speaking for, people whose background I don't specifically, I'm not a part of. Although I will definitely say that I would love to have open any lanes of dialogue and have any of those kind of discussions, because, creating a campus environment in which everyone is included, in which everyone can be equally successful, it's vital not only as like a human right, but as the right of all DePaul students.
Vanessa?
Yeah, so as a woman of color and someone who's a first generation student, I can recognize that I can't speak on behalf of all women of color as well. I think that by having these conversations that surround social issues that exist today, having those conversations that empower each other, those are very important. And I think that student organizations on campus and the idea of inclusivity and those conversations are just extremely important for the upcoming school year. I recognize that I don't know every single person, and I don't know every single woman or man on this campus, and I don't know every single student, but I am more than willing to go outside of my comfort zone and talk to these students who feel like they maybe haven't had their voices heard in years past.
This one's from Kirsten Riley. What will you do to create campus affinity beyond wearing blue on Thursdays? Just for each one of you.
I think affinity, like I mentioned before, goes way beyond school spirit. Though it's really nice to celebrate Blue Demon Week and on Thursdays we wear blue. It is what does our diploma mean when we graduate? When I walk into a space, how does that speak DePaul to me? By adding imagery, adding the color blue, adding the tree of wisdom to different facilities here on campus is extremely important because that makes you feel at home. That makes you feel like you're at DePaul. I think by partnering up with different colleges and universities in the state and different organizations. This past year, we partnered up with DePaul Preparatory School for Vincentian Service Day. Little things like that, building name recognition, not only within the state, but countrywide, I think is very important in making sure that years down the line, DePaul University's name is going to be very important on your diploma.
I am absolutely proud to be a DePaul student. Like, there's not a single other university that I would ever want to go to. And I would like, if president, to instill that, because I think that a lot of the reason that students come to DePaul is they don't come here because they want to make money, or because they want to have giant careers where they make millions of dollars. They come here because they want to change the world. They want to do something with their lives that impact the global community. Live that Vincentian mission. And I think that as SGA president, we could make more initiatives and bringing in students, that are of, disaffected backgrounds and don't normally get involved, and, come together and be proud of that mission. Be proud of the fact that, together we're going to go out there and we're going to do the big things in life. We're going to impact other people. We're not just going to get a degree that makes us a lot of money. And, as president, I'd like to do things, that, we celebrate that Vincentian mission, by having perhaps more Vincentian service days and just opportunities to get involved and be proud of our heritage.
Okay, great. All right, and then this is going to be our last question before our closing remarks. How do you plan to help incorporate students living off campus into the students that are living on campus?
Yeah, so as a commuter student, I find it extremely difficult to stay on campus extremely late at night when that's the time that student organizations typically meet. But I think what's extremely important is making sure that these events and resources and things like that are relayed way before the actual day of, so that students can plan. And I know that my biggest thing is getting involved with the commuter affairs. I know this past year we worked really close with, hopefully very close with the Metra system, and seeing how we can get student discounts for students in the upcoming school year. While that's in the work in progress, those are conversations being had. And I think that could increase the amount of students who end up getting involved at DePaul and who end up, having that home, having that fulfilling education here. And I think that by partnering up with different student organizations on campus and reaching out to those individuals, students are more likely to want to be involved on campus.
Absolutely, I agree with that. That one of the key-ish things that my running mate Michelle Ahn and I have pushed on is creating a common campus environment. Ensuring that students, no matter their backgrounds, whether they're international students, transfer students, freshmen, long-distance commuter students, that they can get involved. And even more than that, I believe in not only having conversations within departments, but I believe going more than that. Getting out there and getting things done. That's why, as senator, I've worked with the Office of Adult, Veteran, and Commuter Student Affairs to build an off-campus housing website for students living off campus, to go online, create profiles, and network and find roommates. And additionally, that they can find housing in apartments. Apartment managers could make their listings on there. And for a university that has 88.5% of students who commute or who live off campus, that I think that SJ needs to make a more concerted effort to reaching out and making sure that those students are involved.
Okay, great. And now we'll do a 30-second closing remark from each. Since we started with Luke in the beginning, we'll start with you.
So I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity of getting more students involved. That's the one reason one thing I've been pushing this upcoming election season. I love DePaul. I love the community. I love the students. I love the experiences that I've had. And I can't say that every student has had those experiences, and I recognize it. And I also recognize there are improvements to be made. I am willing to go outside of my comfort zone. I'm willing to challenge the people within SGA to get outside of their comfort zones, to engage with students that they wouldn't normally have, to make sure that each student has a fulfilling experience here.
Thank you.
Again, I'd like to say thank you to the DePaulia for this opportunity to come and speak in front of you all. To me, the biggest thing I'll sum up with is I think this whole race can be summed up for me in 2 phrases, because the Vincentian mission is a big part of me. If you're a voter out there and you enjoy the direction that SGA has gone and you believe that everything that SGA has done has been, adequate for you, then by all means vote for my opponent. But if you ask yourself the question of what must be done and your answer is more, then please vote for myself and vote Vincentians United. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. That concludes our presidential debate.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Voting starts Monday and goes through
Friday.
Friday.
And we'll have more debates tomorrow starting at 10:30. So please
Bye,
tune in.
everyone.